Listen. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is the operating system of the world, written in the cold, hard language of debt, trust, and control. Pull up a chair. Let's start at the very beginning, before banks, before coins, with a simple human promise. One man gives another a sack of grain. Return it to me after the harvest, he says. That promise, that future obligation, was the first bond. It created a link through time. Now, fast forward. See the goldsmiths of medieval Europe. People stored their gold with them for safety. The goldsmiths issued paper receipts. Soon, people began trading the receipts instead of the heavy gold. The paper became currency. But the goldsmiths noticed something crucial: not everyone came back for their gold at once. So, they began lending out the gold that was just sitting there, issuing more paper receipts than they had gold. They were creating money from thin air, charging interest on something they didn't truly own. This was the genesis of fractional reserve banking, the original sin of finance. The system was built not on solid ground, but on a probability, the probability that not all promises would be called in at the same time. Your modern bank operates on the exact same principle. The money in your account is a digital promise, an IOU, backed by a fraction of the actual reserves. The entire edifice is a monument to collective faith. This brings us to the first invisible chain: debt as control. When you take a mortgage, a student loan, a car loan, you are not just acquiring an asset. You are signing a contract for your future behavior. You pledge your future labor, your time, your compliance. You must maintain your income. You cannot risk rebellion or unconventional career paths. The system's whip is your credit score, a digital tattoo that rates your obedience. A low score excludes you from the financial kingdom: no loans, no apartment, sometimes no job. Debt enslaves not with walls, but with algorithms and monthly payments. It is the most sophisticated mechanism for ensuring social and economic stability ever devised. Kings used armies to keep people in line. Today, central bankers use balance sheets. And what is the fuel for this machine? The very substance of money itself, which brings us to the second great deception, the silent theft of inflation. Governments and central banks have a magic trick: they can dilute the value of your money, and they do it constantly. When they print currency, or create it digitally, beyond the growth of real goods and services, they cause inflation. Each unit of your money buys less. Why would they do this? Firstly, it's a hidden tax. It reduces the real value of the government's own massive debt. Secondly, it spurs spending. Why save cash that melts, fueling economic activity? But this theft is not uniform. It punishes the saver, the retiree on a fixed pension, the wage earner. Their purchasing power silently evaporates. Meanwhile, those with access to cheap debt, the already wealthy, corporations, can borrow vast sums and buy real assets, land, companies, commodities, whose value rises with inflation. This is how the rich get richer during money printing sprees. Their assets appreciate, the cash of the middle class withers. It is a perpetual, legalized transfer of wealth from the bottom to the top, hidden in plain sight within economic indicators. Now, understand the rhythm of this system: crisis and consolidation. The cycles of boom and bust are not mere accidents, they are features. Excessive debt creation leads to bubbles. Bubbles pop. When they do, panic ensues. The average person, terrified, sells their devalued stocks or loses their home. Who buys? Those with capital preserved, the very institutions often behind the bubble. They acquire real wealth for pennies on the dollar. The 2008 crisis was a classic wealth transfer of historic proportions. The Fed created trillions to bail out the financial system, inflating asset prices, stocks, real estate. Who owns those assets? The top 10%. The crisis, for them, was a fire sale. This brings us to the final, impending stage, the digital cage. Seeing the fragility of the faith-based fiat system and the need for ultimate control, the powers are rolling out central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. This is not cryptocurrency. CBDCs are programmable money. Imagine, your salary is paid in digital tokens that expire if not spent in a month, to stimulate the economy. Our social benefits can only be spent on approved items in approved stores. Travel to a disapproved location. Your wallet won't work. Participate in a protest. Your transactions could be frozen. It is the perfect tool for behavioral control, combining surveillance with financial coercion. The end of cash is the end of financial privacy and freedom. It is the final lock on the chain. So, what is the move? First, see the chains. Then, think in terms of real, scarce assets, land, productive skills, precious metals, things that exist outside the digital ledger. Manage debt ruthlessly. Save in value, not in currency. Cultivate self-sufficiency. Most importantly, understand that the greatest power you have is the power to see the game. Once you see it, you are no longer just a player. You can start to choose your own rules. The fire is lit. Now, go and see. The fire crackles, casting long, dancing shadows that look like bars on the walls. You see them now, don't you? The bars made of digits, of credit scores, of monthly subscriptions and the relentless pressure to consume. But seeing the cage is the first step to finding the key. The key is not in rebellion against the system itself, that is a mountain too sheer to climb. The key is in building your own citadel outside its most vulnerable walls. Let's talk about the citadel. Its foundation is sovereignty. Personal, financial, and mental sovereignty. This begins with a brutal audit. Track every digital coin that enters and leaves your domain. Categorize not as expenses, but as investments and tributes. A tribute is money paid for the privilege of existing within the system, rent, utilities, taxes, debt interest. An investment is money that either increases your earning power, education, tools, health, or acquires assets that store value independently of the system. Your goal is to minimize tributes and maximize investments. This is the silent, daily rebellion. The walls of your citadel are built with real assets. The system's fiat currency is an IOU on a failing promise. You must convert these fading IOUs into things that have endured the collapse of empires. This is what the ancient part of your brain understands: land, water, food, energy, precious metals. Gold is not an investment for getting rich, it is a financial airbag, a form of savings they cannot devalue with a keyboard command. Productive land is a generator of life and value. Bitcoin and certain cryptocurrencies, for those who deeply understand them, represent a new, decentralized form of digital gold, a potential hedge against the very CBDC system they are building. But beware, this new frontier is a wild land, full of both opportunity and traps. The principle remains: own things that are scarce, useful, and exist beyond the immediate grasp of a central authority's balance sheet. The garrison guarding your citadel is diversified skill. Your most valuable asset is your mind and your ability to create, fix, negotiate, and heal. Do not be a specialist in a single, system-dependent field. Be a generalist of resilience. Learn to grow food. Understand basic mechanics. Learn a trade that serves human needs, not just market fluctuations. Digital skills are powerful, but pair them with analog, tangible ones. In a world of abstract finance, the person who can mend a fence, treat a wound, or build a website holds real power. This makes you less reliant on the system's job matrix for survival. You trade dependence for optionality. Now, let's discuss strategy for the coming storms, the crisis harvest. When the next economic winter comes, and it will, for it is in the system's cyclical nature, the majority will panic. They will liquidate their real assets, stocks, bonds, even heirlooms, for fast cash to pay tributes. This is when your years of discipline pay off. If you have built a reserve of liquid, non-debased money, like the metals we spoke of, you become the buyer. You do not buy speculative nonsense. You buy productive capacity at a discount. You buy the worried neighbor's tools. You acquire a piece of land the bank is repossessing. You provide liquidity to a solid local business in exchange for a stake. You must be emotionally prepared to do this when fear is at its peak, when the news is at its most dire. This is not exploitation, it is the recycling of capital from weak hands to strong, prepared hands. It is how the Medicis operated. It is how every crisis has always worked. Finally, we face the digital frontier, the privacy war. The push for CBDCs is a push for a panopticon, a prison where the walls are made of light and data. Your resistance here is twofold. First, support and use financial tools that prioritize privacy where legal and practical. Second, and more crucially, cultivate a lifestyle that is not solely dependent on the digital approval layer. Build local, trust-based economies, barter networks, community-supported agriculture, skill shares. Have a cash reserve for as long as it exists. Understand encryption. Your goal is not to become a ghost, but to ensure that your participation in the digital system is a choice, not a coerced necessity for survival. The most powerful stance is to be able to step away, even partially, and still thrive. You are not powerless. You are just outnumbered by sleepwalkers. Your awakening is your primary advantage. This knowledge is your map. Discipline is your weapon. Time is your ally. They control the currency, but you can choose what you value. They monitor transactions, but you can build untracked relationships of trust. They create cycles of crisis, but you can learn to anticipate and navigate the waves. The story does not end with you in chains. It ends with you, having seen the blueprint of the prison, quietly building a key. Not to escape into some fantasy wilderness, but to move within the world with a freedom that comes from understanding its deepest rules. The fire is dying down now. But you carry the ember. Guard it. Feed it. Let it light your path, not as a blaze of rebellion, but as the steady, warm glow of a sovereign self, building a life that cannot be digitally switched off. Now go. The dawn is yours to meet, with eyes wide open.